All right, this is Tim Cain on remote work. I've had some hot takes before. I will reiterate them here if they're relevant. Um, I'll just start by saying I'm not a fan. I think you can do it. I think if you prefer it, go for it. I think that it is a very different beast for working. Put it that way.
Hi, everyone. It's me,
Hi,
Tim.
Tim.
Today, I want to talk about remote
Yeah.
work. And specifically, this is an answer to a question from R3M1 who asks, Hey, Tim, what's your take on remote staff versus having the team work in an office? Do you have a preference? What are the pros and cons, etc.? Good question. I'm really glad the way you phrased it because, like everything, I think remote work has pros and cons.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's very little out there that I think is 100% good or 100% bad. And maybe that's my programmer brain thinking because there's no perfect sorting algorithm. It all depends on what you're sorting and how many and how frequently it
Yeah.
changes and whether it's already sorted when you go to resort. There's no good data structure. Sometimes you want an array, sometimes you want a singly linked list, sometimes you want a doubly linked list, sometimes you want something else entirely. So I think remote work has good things and bad things about it. If someone tries to tell you remote work is all good or all bad, they're probably trying to sell you something or trying to sell you on something.
It's true. It's a different beast. It has good things, it has bad things. I've seen hybrid work styles work where, like pick your days, but two of them need to be in office, or we mandate that everybody comes into the office for planning meetings or once a month for a just casual social meeting so that we don't forget each other. I think that those tend to work better than an all in, all out approach, personally.
Because remote work isn't new. Remote work has existed forever. My second game that I made was done remote. I made Bard's Tale construction set before I was hired at Interplay. I did it all in my house, and I would drive in once a week for maybe an hour, hour and a half to show my progress, to give them a backup of the code, and just to get feedback to see what I should do in the next week. So, my first game, Grandstein Bridge, was done in an office, and my second game was almost entirely remote.
I will say this too, that working remotely is a little bit different from working from home. I would even separate those. I think that I hate working from home. I don't mind as much working remotely. I prefer to work in person. I can't work from home. Like some people just don't have the proper home setup. They don't have a separate room they can use for an office, so they have a lot of distractions. Personally, I don't like using the same computer that I play games on and relax on to do work because it fucks with my mind. I like being able to leave my home and separate my home life from my work life, which is why, I rent this separate office. So they're all different beasts, and I think they all have pros and cons. You just need to find out what works healthy for you and what works healthy for the team. That's really what it comes down to.
So, this has been like this forever. And in fact, contractors are almost always remote
Mm-hmm.
because if you have them come in and be in there in office hours and use computers, a lot more states are viewing them as employees and not contractors. Anyway, we used remote contractors a lot at Interplay and Troika back in the 90s and the early 2000s. So, again, this isn't something new. One thing I can say about it is some people did really great as remote workers, some not so much.
Me.
Now, it turns out some people just need the interaction, and it's them. They want interaction with coworkers. Sometimes they need guidance. Sometimes their work needs editing. So if you wait too long, they're due too much, and the editing requires throwing out some of the stuff they did because they went in the wrong direction. Some people have uneven work. So if you can see their work every day or every week, it lets you keep them on track. So I think that's how remote work has turned out over the last few years. Now that the great experiment has a lot more people doing remote work, some people are great at it, some people aren't. and it's different. Sometimes it's the people. Sometimes it's this person is not good at doing remote work. And maybe it's something to do with them, or it may have to do with their home environment. They may have a home environment that's just not conducive to working there.
Yep.
Maybe they don't have a place to set up a home office that's quiet, that's somewhat set apart. Maybe their environment is too loud. Maybe there's too many people. Maybe it's too cramped. It's just not conducive for whatever reason to doing work there. A lot of people who were really pushing for everyone being remote, in some ways it felt a little entitled because you don't know what people's home lives are like. And some people just don't have a home life that is set up for them being there, working there.
Yeah, and you could also make the argument in reverse, but I think that a counter argument to that would be that we had existed as a certain way primarily, and most people had adapted to that, and trying to do it reverse, it's not like it's a two-way street that's perfect. I know that a lot of people who like the fact that they could work with fewer distractions kind of forgot that they had kids and families. And it's like, well, now you have to sit there with your kid and you have to look after them. And now instead of doing doing the task or being in the meeting, you have to quickly do something with your kid. And that's like a whole thing. So, you know, it's a challenge. It's a challenge.
Also, you've heard of third spaces. You have work
Third space.
and then home, and then you have a third space. It's neither work nor home. If work and home become the same thing, your third space becomes second space. And if you didn't have a third space, you only have one space.
I've never heard of that before, but that is exactly what I have too, right? Where it's it's purely, it's like one of the biggest reasons is for mental reasons. Like I need a space where I can just work, where I can come, I can think only about work, not about home, nothing else. And that moment in between walking is like my debriefing. I can be like, okay, I'm going home. I have to do this today at home. I need to prepare food, and then tomorrow for work, we'll deal with that on the way back to work. And then when I wake up, I do home stuff, and then on my way to work, I think, okay, what are we doing today? What do I need to do? What's the goal for today? Backup plan, things like that. What the pub is for? I mean, yeah, pub is great too, but I think that with people who started working from home, you don't have those spontaneous days of, hey, what are you guys doing after work today? Let's just go get a drink, and let's vent. Let's Yeah, to vent about work and home, exactly. Yeah. Much like work from home and game dev, you kind of need to be there at times. Yes, being in person can really stir up your creativity. Yeah, I think that in a lot of ways, you have maybe fewer working hours, right? Like perfect hours, I think is the term. At home, you had 7 perfect hours. At office, you have 5.5 perfect hours, let's say. But the 5.5 perfect hours, you actually had better efficiency because those 1.5 perfect hours, or the lost hours, you were spending communicating, going out to lunch, and resolving problems that now at home you have no incentive to do. You have no incentive to just to randomly communicate with somebody who you don't know if they're busy because you can't look over and see, oh, they're on their break, or oh, they're busy with something. I'll just contact them with them. Or you can say, hey, you got like 10 minutes that we can spend? No? Okay. Catch me when you're available, right? Why not just work at home at work? Yeah, or forget both, yeah. Yeah, the third space makes a lot of sense when he said it. I never really thought about it that way.
A lot of people can't deal like that. Now, in the last few years, I've talked to a lot of people at different companies. Sometimes it's
Same.
because I was contracting at different companies. Sometimes I just had friends that worked at different companies. And one time I actually was on a forum talking to people.
There are people all across the spectrum.
Different companies. And let me give you the bad news up front. Overall, since a lot of places went remote work, productivity is down. Now, before you get all upset, some of you, I didn't do a survey. This is just me talking to people in the normal course of me going about my business in the game.
I could be wrong. I think the statistics do back this up However, I don't think we have fully adapted to remote work yet. I will say that as somebody who is not a fan of remote work, I will throw a bone. I will play devil's advocate. I don't think we've adapted to it, and I think a lot of places are still learning how to properly take advantage of it. But I do believe, if I'm not mistaken, somebody please correct me, the statistics do show that productivity is down with remote work. And I have seen that on a personal level for whatever that's worth, which is nothing. We have a large majority of people can't and don't know how to remote work. Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of it too. That's not just the company's failure to adapt to it, but also it goes against the way that we've been working as a species for so long. And he's right, like we've had it existing before, like contract work, right? But it was the minority of work that was done remotely. Most work was done in an office with people. But you're wrong, but just as baseline, not about this thing. Fair enough. Fair enough. They'll work from home, work great from home. I do my best work, but the rest can't do that. So of course it's easier for a company to just call everyone back. Yeah, I think it just depends on the people, right? It depends on the work being done. And I will say this, only in the case of game development is all that I can speak about. I really don't have anything beyond that. I know that in game development, I do think that remote work is probably less, generally speaking, less productive. But overall, you have the entire globe of artists and creators to pick from for jobs. And generally speaking, it's you're just going to be able to fill roles a lot easier and probably for cheaper. Now that has downsides too, but you know, it's like why would somebody hire you just because you're closer by when you cost 5 times as much as somebody in Eastern Europe who can do your job just as well or whatever, right? For way cheaper.
Industry. But if you don't believe me, you can actually check. I believe there was a drop in games coming out. The number of games that came out in 2023 and 2024, especially from big publishers, dropped. A lot of games had delays, and I think a lot of you think the quality dropped too. So,
I do think the quality dropped and delays happened. I don't know if I would fully attribute this to work from home. Let me word it this way. I don't think we've had enough long term. Yes, I think pandemic was part of it. Was there was an adjustment period and certainly a lot of stress probably handle. I don't think we have enough long term data to tell if work from home is good enough yet. I think we're still in that adaptation period. That's my bone that I'll throw here. I also think though that just games have gotten more and more expensive to work on, and that has trickle down effects on the production of games. So, but like this in IT, it's way easier to work remote. I don't need to be inspired or creative. Yes, I agree with that. I agree with that. Quality drop because of shitty management, not work from home. Yeah, I think that it's. I think that it is a factor. I just don't know if it is the primary factor, and I don't know if we have had enough data to tell if long term can we adapt to work from home and be as productive as before with the same number of people in creative jobs. I know that's a lot of addendums to add here, but we're talking specifically about like game development, which is in most parts a creative job, and we're getting specific. Did it impact that because companies were not prepared? Yes, exactly. Especially in gaming where you have the problem of security, build distribution, etc. A lot of things to take care of. Infrastructure to support remote is a nightmare. Yeah, I think that might have been a very large reason why there were delays and there were gaps. I think some companies blamed it on that, even if they didn't have that problem. But I think a lot of companies blamed it on that and were 100% valid to do so.
you can attribute this to the shift to remote work required a lot of learning on both people's parts.
Yes.
Sometimes the employee had to learn how to work at home without access to other people, with having to do questions and meetings over videos. And sometimes managers had to learn how to manage people remotely, where you couldn't just walk into their office, where you couldn't have scheduled.
Screen sharing apps on at all times. You can never take a break. We detect your mouse movements and we count any lack of movement for 15 seconds to be a break, and that would be deducted from your hourly pay.
Office meetings where you couldn't get everybody in one room to do a strike team. There was a lot of learning going
Yeah.
on both sides. So that they attributed the productivity drop to that. And it did come back up, but it didn't come back up to 100. It seemed to level off somewhere between 75 and 80%, depending on who you talk to. Some places lower, some places a little higher. I've yet to have a company that wasn't remote before the pandemic say that they're entirely back to 100% after the pandemic. If you work at such a place, leave a comment. I would love to hear from you. I'd also love your ideas on how you made that happen, because it hasn't happened everywhere. Now, here's the thing. A lot of people, when they remote work, think they're really productive because it feels like they're working all the time. But they're not. And I don't mean to imply that they're lazy, although you know what? Probably some of them are. They're just not working a full 8 hours, but they're saying they are. But for most of them,
I think working a full 8 hours is overrated. And I'll say it this way: if you can do the work in 5 hours at the same and have the same end goal that you would have just sitting in front of your monitor for 8 hours, you should do it. If having that hour break in between, for lunch makes you more productive overall, I'm happy for you to take it. Yeah, it's to obsess over time rather than quality. Yeah, exactly. I agree with that entirely. Walk in your office and IT mostly work in an open space farm anyway. Yeah, yeah. I think the time is what I need is I need the task done. I don't need you to be here for 8 hours, but I need you to be here for certain hours in case we need to resolve a blocker. And yeah, I think there is a lot of that at home where it's like, well, I sat in front of my computer for 10 hours today. Yeah, but you barely did anything today. It's like you're not being productive. You're just logging time. An excuse you can use with Nev is true.
are working. But when they don't have other people around them, they find it hard to get into that work groove.
We have that, I think, on here. I think there are quite a few people that watch this stream because they like to have somebody working on games on their second monitor to make them feel like I won't say not alone, but it's just like somebody is being productive next to them, and so it kind of encourages you to be productive. That's another thing that I really enjoy about working in offices. It feels like everybody's there for the same thing, and I really enjoy that. We just want you to work every waking hour of your day because they think that's what gets results productivity. Spoiler alert, it doesn't. I think that some companies do that. I think bad managers look at that. Work on my game, then I come here to sniff farts. That's true. Fill my heart with so much joy and warmth, do I? And help me deal with my crippling loneliness. Get out of here.
I did a video about going to university, going to school versus being self-taught. And in that video, and I'll link it below, people talked about, being at a university helped them study.
Yeah, somebody is setting your schedule. Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the hardest parts about being. I think we reacted to that video, but I think that's one of the hardest parts about being a solo learner, which is what I was too, because I didn't go to university. Nobody sets your schedule. If you do not work that day, nothing will happen. Nothing good is going to happen, but nothing really bad is going to happen either. Like, nobody's going to fail you. You could just play a game. You don't have to work today. You don't have to do that tutorial. Just play a game. You know you want to. Just start it up. It's already there. You already know how to play it. Just load up the game and enjoy it. The demon in my head. No, I was that way for years. I mean, I get it. It's just there. And it's nice to go to a university because you have somebody else setting your schedule, setting your curriculum, and giving you that pathway to finishing, and you don't have to think about that. And you're around people with the same level of skill as you, generally the same age group. It's just kind of like you continue doing the thing that you've been doing for 12 years already. It's just now you're on your pathway to figuring out what you need to do to have the career that you think that you want, right? And if that's, you know what, if that's feminine dance theory, go for it. You're probably not going to make money off of it, but guess what? You can get that degree if you want.
A lot of other people studying helped them study. That's why people went to the library, not just because it was quiet, but there was a whole bunch of other people
Yes.
studying there, and it got them into the
Mm-hmm.
mindset. For some people too, they need the structure. They're not good at learning that stuff on their own. They want the structure that classes provide. Like, we're going to learn this quarter, and then we're going to learn this, and then we're going to build on these things. Some people need that at work too. They need to be given a few tasks. They work on it. They get feedback on those tasks, make any changes they need to do, and then that informs the next tasks they do. For some people, working remotely interfered with that rhythm. Now, some people knew that and they could not wait to come back. Yes, there were people who were waiting for their offices to stop being fully remote because they wanted to work back in the office.
Me.
And I've heard stories of some of them being made fun of by their peers, or maybe even being pressured and a little bit bullied by their peers.
I had that happen. I'm not going to name names, but yes, I had that happen. And you know, and I was. I'm not going to get into it. Just, yes, it happened. It was really uncomfortable. I know that I was in the minority of people who wanted to come back into office and work, but there were a few of them, thankfully, and I am glad because I wasn't alone. And you know what? They're still good friends today. I still see them from time to time. Oftentimes, when I say, "Hey, I'm going to Krakow," you know, tomorrow, it's because I'm going to see these guys that I worked in office with who came back to the office, just like me. And unfortunately, a lot of the ones that didn't return to office, I don't see as often, which is kind of a shame because they're, you know, they're still good friends of mine, but there's no opportunity to make that spontaneous meeting happen. But I will nowadays. I'm very happy to take the hour bus drive that it takes and costs to get to Krakow to go have lunch with them and then take the hour bus back to here. It spends a lot of my time, but you know what? It's really good just seeing them and catching up and having that time with them in person.
Which reminded me of the things I used to work like. I used to hear like, "Why are you working more than 40 hours a week? It makes me look bad." And that eventually turned into you're giving away time to the company and you have bad work-life balance. But I've heard of people who wanted to go back into the office and their coworkers were trying to convince them not to because they didn't want to go back. So they didn't want their other coworkers to go back for fear that the company would make everybody come back. And again, I don't know why some people want this. For some of them, they just couldn't work well at home. For others, they like working at home. Maybe it has something to do, if you watch my video on some people have a job, some people have a career, and some people have a calling. I think a lot of the calling people wanted to be back in the office. But then again, some of the calling people worked really well at home. So I don't know what it is. But
I want to watch the video.
when I talk about some people could work well at home because it was isolated and quiet, some roles do better at that too. So it's not just people, sometimes it's the roles. Programmers, and I've talked about this, really like quiet, isolated programming time.
Yes, they do. Designers like me, I strive on being able to find a problem. I need to talk to an artist about this and being able to just kind of spontaneously make that happen rather than dropping a DM into someone's chat and waiting some unknown amount of time because they might be busy to just quickly get like a 5-minute answer from them, right? I get it, it's not great, but guess what? We're all here trying to make the game. And sometimes those small breaks might be a little annoying here and there, but I think they do, in many cases, end up with a better productivity overall, at least for the entire project. So what I'm gonna do is watch Tim talk about shit. I do like Tim talking. He's a good talker. I'm even a better yapper than him.
They tend to do really well in remote work. But not all roles do well like that. Some roles do better when they can bounce ideas off
Yep.
people, ask people how they did things, look over the shoulder of other people doing things, and then go do it
By the way,
themselves.
I also think that it's not just roles, but I think juniors, for instance, can operate better when their surroundings are filled with people who are more knowledgeable than them and they can just look at a screen and maybe just watch or observe, maybe drop it on a meeting, not say anything and observe this. I do think that juniors can benefit a lot from that, or just joining on the lunch where the designer wants to talk with the lead programmer and lead artist about how to solve a problem. I think there's a lot to be gained from that, and juniors kind of just get the short end of the stick because they're expected to, I don't know, sometimes work in a vacuum and then get their work reviewed, which is just not great. Sucks for people who like work from home because even if you work well and the rest like to come to office, you'll be forced to return as well. But if the overall team's productivity is better, then is it a bad thing for the company? Maybe this is a question without like an answer so much as it is if you at this point in our society, if you are going to start a company that primarily is going to be an office, you need to explicitly state that. You need to be transparent about that. And I think it's okay if you try to hire people who want to be in office and vice versa. Now we have to contend with adding this to kind of our list of, hey, just so you know, this is a in-office role. This is a remote-only role. This is a hybrid role where we expect this, this, and this. But like this, while I'm working for someone else, I prefer work from home. I'll work for my own game company that I'll prefer to go to my office. Fair enough.
Some art roles do better that way, design roles. And not all people, even in roles that tend to do well, not all programmers, for example, did well working from home.
Yep.
So
For
not
various
all people
reasons.
do well working from home, and not all roles did well working from home, and not everyone, even in roles that tended to do well, did well working from home. Now, let me just say that first of all, I don't think that genie of remote work is going back in the bottle. Remote work is here to stay. Personally, I like it. It works well for me. I'm really good at managing my time. I'm really good at being task oriented. If I get up at 5 in the morning and I'm wide awake, I like just getting started at work. I don't like having to wait 2 or 3 hours because they don't want me too far out of the core
That's
hours
fair.
at the office. But and also I think companies are getting way better, and by companies I mean managers and leads are getting way better at managing remote
Agree.
workers. They're just learning how to run teams, how to go over tasks, how programmers can do not pair programming but maybe code review better even when they're not sitting side by side. But like everything with multiple sides, with pros and cons, some people just aren't good at remote work, and other people need to get better at doing remote work if this is something they want to do long term. What I see happening now at various companies is people are getting reviewed on their work and decisions are being made because sometimes the remote work just didn't make sense for this person. So I see that happening, and I see some people reluctantly being asked to come back into work. I don't know what's going to happen long term. I think, like I said, remote work is here to stay, but I don't think it's here to stay for everybody, and I don't think it's here to stay in every role.
And I think it's okay. I think if a company wants to say we're only hiring in office roles from now on, so be it, right? That's the freedom of the company to do that. I'll just say one of the biggest reasons I do it is just for social reasons. That I like being around friends. I like maybe, if we can watch this video about the career job and calling, that to me it is a calling. Game development, game design is a calling. And I like being around people that can, you know, just I can be friends with, that I can make jokes with, I can laugh with, I can talk about my passion with, and we can vent about games and rant about bullshit. Not being able to, you can't really do that over like Discord or fucking Microsoft Teams. Um, it's just not the same. It's not the same. How can I pretend to push the broom if there's nobody to see me doing it? Companies look at an individual level. That's where the problem is. Or they don't look. They look at data and say, "Oh, okay, everyone return." Yeah, I think it's just. I think that it sucks for the companies that had to make that decision and realize that it wasn't great, their productivity overall, and they need to say, okay, well, we need to hire more people and find new ways to manage, or we need to send out the ultimatum and say, you know what, it sucks, but guess what? If you can't get back in office, then we're going to, have to not renew contracts. And you know what, it sucks, but I think that that is a company's right to do so. Teams kill that software. Yeah, Teams fucking sucked. I use Teams at one job, and then what we're gonna do with Microraptors, just use Discord or whatever gets better at that time. But Discord works pretty well for us because primarily I like that I can keep development right in tune with the community. At the same application, maybe just a different channel, I can update developers and then they can just repost that on general. Like, hey, dude, look at this awesome thing I'm making. Oh, can we show the players? Yeah, do it. Okay. Forward to general chat. Good stuff. I like that, and I want to do that, and I want to continue doing that.
I don't think this is any different than some people do work better in.
You like to flirt when making coffee? Okay, so funnily enough, I don't know if you guys have heard the term work husband or work wife. Section. God, what am I saying? Sexual tension is actually a rather common component of a lot of people's in-office and probably even remote work relationships. Just saying. Not that you act on it, not that you are explicit with it, but the concept of work husband or work wife is more common than you think.
Different shifts. Some people do work better at night shifts or early morning shifts. Some people like to mix roles. I love being a designer and a programmer on the same project. That works for some people, doesn't work for others. Remote work is no different. I think it's here to stay, but it's not going to be here to stay for everybody, and certainly not everybody in every role.
Yeah, it's not perfectly better, perfectly worse.
R3M1, I hope that answers your question.
Another great video. Another fantastic video from good old Tim Cain here. He's not that old. If you guys want to support him, here's the link. Did he? Yeah, jobs, careers, and callings. I wanted to watch this one. I can probably do it, but I can't yap on for too long. How long is this? 13 minutes? Okay. I can't yap on forever for this one. This one will have to be my last one. But if you're watching on YouTube, thank you for watching that one. And I hope to catch you on the next one. Thank you so much for watching.